Hi there! Today we're going to take a look at Emerald Mine for the Amiga. No, we're not. Emerald Mine for the Amiga is one of my favorite games of all times, or rather Emerald Mine 2. It's a multiplayer game and we played this a lot, had a lot of fun killing each other in the game by just smashing rocks on our heads and stuff like that, or getting dynamite to explode next to each other. Great fun. Maybe the most fun I had, maybe except for Bomberman on the Amiga with a 4-player adapter which you plugged into the parallel port. But today I want to do my own Emerald Mine. This is something I had in mind for a long time. I actually, when I had my game company back in the early 2000s, we started a game called Rocks, which would have been a 3D version of Boulder Dash. And I'm not going to do a 3D version of Boulder Dash. We are going to do an 8-bit super low res, super low key version of Boulder Dash. And we have to come up with a name actually. I don't have one yet. And we will do this in PICO-8. PICO-8 is a game development environment which is super compact, which has a sprite editor and a code editor and music editor, sound effects editor, map editor. So it has all the good stuff. We don't have to use any other tools. We just work in PICO-8. It's pretty easy to learn. It looks a little bit like BASIC. And so it gives us this true 8-bit feeling. And I wish something like this had existed back in the days. There were Amos and Blitz Basic and other things, but nothing comes close to PICO-8, which is just absolute perfection. So in this episode, I'm going to show you what PICO-8 is, how it works, and then the series will continue in the next weeks with an episode here and there where we go and build a Boulder Dash clone. So come along and enjoy. The first thing we do is to go to lexaloffel.com. And if you go to lexaloffel.com, which is the company which developed PICO-8 and another game engine which is called Voxotron, you are greeted with this screen, which is pretty basic. PICO-8 is the 8-bit pixel-based game engine, and Voxotron is a 3D game engine. You can already see this looks a little bit like things like Minecraft or stuff like that. So we're not going to take a look at Voxotron at this point. Maybe if we have our Boulder Dash in 2D, we go and make one in 3D, which would be quite interesting. But for now, we're going to PICO-8. And we are greeted with a PICO-8 screen, and we can download the software. We are going to do that in a minute. And you can see those games around here that are cartridges. And games in PICO-8 are always stored in PNG images. So if you download a cartridge for the PICO-8 engine, you are actually downloading an image of the cartridge, PNG image of the cartridge, and in this image all the data for the game is stored, which is pretty interesting. So there are different tools. There's a magazine about this, and if you press the play button, you can actually see PICO-8 booting. And here's a game in PICO-8, and you can play it in the browser if you want. So PICO-8 is so low key that you can actually play it in a browser or on a Raspberry Pi. There are emulators or PICO-8 engines for all different platforms like Linux, Apple, Windows, and yeah, so let's go and download the software. You can see this here, and PICO-8 is not free, so that might throw some of you off. It's not free. It's about $15. This is a real steal. $15 is nothing. I'm not affiliated with this. I'm just a pure fan of this, and I did a game with my son, and he has fun drawing characters and map tiles, and I'm the one who has to program them. So we are a good team at that. So if you're thinking about doing a game or just trying out a game, you can also do other things, demos or just some graphic stuff, some presentations. You can do anything in PICO-8. But, and that is the catch, you are limited to 128 by 128 pixels at 16 colors. And what seems to be a huge limitation actually, you can see this here, drives creativity. And that is something I really like about this. You have 4-channel sound, you have Lua code. Lua is a programming language, or scripting language, rather, which is used in different projects, and it's also used here in PICO-8 in some reduced form. You have 256 sprites, which are 8x8 pixels, but you can combine sprites to do bigger sprites, and we will see about that in a minute. And we have a map which can be 128 by 32 cells, which doesn't seem to be much, but if you take a look at Boulder Dash or games like this or Emerald Mine, they usually have about the same size. Okay, so let's go and download this. For that you can pay with PayPal, enter your email address, and then you land here on this download page. And the latest version, at least at the filming of this video, which is November 18th, 2021, you have PICO-8 beta and you have Swarm Racer, which is a game. And we download PICO-8 beta. Since I'm on the Mac, I download the Mac file, which is a zip, which you unzip and you just drag and drop the PICO-8 file, which is in there, into your program folder. On Windows you have an installer, so no big deal there. Okay, so let's start PICO-8 and take a look. If we boot into PICO-8, we are greeted with this screen. This looks a lot like a shell or the prompt in on the C64 or the Atari. And if you type help, you get all the commands here. You can load and save just by typing load and save and run. This looks pretty much like the usual 8-bit home computer. But if you press the escape key, you are in the game engine itself. So you can switch with the escape key between the command line, which is here, and the tool, which is here. What we see here is the code editor. So this is actually a tab. So if I want to do another file, I just click here, and now I can switch between files if I put something here. Down on the left we have the maximum lines of code, which is 8,192. We can see the character count, which is a maximum of 65,535, and a compressed size, which is 0%. So you see, you are already limited in what you can program and do and stuff. But don't be afraid, 8,000 lines of code in PICO-8 is a lot. We might end up with less than 1,000 maybe for our Boulder Dash clone. Okay, so that is a code editor, and you can switch between the different editors up here. So if you click on this icon, which looks like a little Space Invader face, you go to the sprite editor, and here you can edit sprites, and you can switch between the sprites down here. You can edit the sprite up here. You have drawing tools down here. You can combine sprites. So if you, for example, press the magnifier, you can see now all this is one sprite. Now this is a sprite, and so on and so on. You can change the pixel size. And here are some bits you can switch on and off for defining what that sprite represents. So sprites are not just the player sprites or the enemies, but also the map tiles. And that brings us to the map editor, which is up here. Here you can place map tiles on a map. You can do different maps, and yeah, for Boulder Dash or Boulder Dash clone, we will actually do quite some levels and maps, and we can do all this here. Then we have our sound effect generator, and we can generate sound effects by just moving the mouse and pressing space, place that, and we can do something like this, and there we have a sound effect. If we want another one, we just move over, select another thing, draw with the mouse. And last but not least, we have our music editor, and if you have ever used a sound tracker on a C64 or an Amiga, this might look familiar. You just play the notes by pressing a key, and we can switch this on. can use the sound effects we created before just to play music. We have 4 voices, so I'm not the big music guy. That might not be a very big focus of this game, but maybe one of you has some interest in doing this. Feel free to send me a mail and maybe you can do the music for this. Yes, so this is the PICO-8 environment. If we press escape, we're in the shell again, and there's a command, and that is pretty much the most important command if you don't want to do a game yourself, which is explore, which is kind of explore. If you do that, you will see different games people have made, and you can just load them because you can upload the games to the, oh look, here's something like a Boulder clone already. Let's take a look at the Amiga Boing Ball and we say run card. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, so someone made a map and then a giant sprite. Okay. You go back to explore and you can see here are many games, shooters and all kinds of stuff. And they are really great games. The most famous game ever made with PICO-8 may be Celeste, which also got remakes on all major platforms like PlayStation 4 and Xbox and stuff like that. And Celeste was originally made with PICO-8. So this is pretty amazing, and it's a pretty amazing game. If you don't know it, just take a closer look. I will show some gameplay here. Yeah, so let's move back to the editor. And by the way, all the games on all the game cartridges you load, you can also see how they are made, because you can just press escape and see the code or the sprites. You can see here how the sprites are made, which is pretty cool. You can see the different parts of the bouncing ball here, and you could easily bounce something else here. Just say I put a big W here and a K here, the initials of my name, and if I go and type run, then there are my initials. This black is always transparent, so as you can see through my initials here. Yeah, you can also see the sound effects. Could do a different sound effect here. Let's try this out. Yeah, so pretty much like in the old days when you typed in a listing, you can see everything that is done in here. And that is just amazing, because you can learn by reading the code from others. And you can see this is 621 lines long, which is nothing. And actually there's no map background, but a drawn background. Interesting. Okay, so that is that. So I'm doing a fresh start here of PICO-8. And what I want to show you is first what the basic of a game in PICO-8 is in code, which is just a few lines. And then I want to go and design a pretty basic player sprite standing right now. So we will have something to move around. So in every game engine, or pretty much any game you program today, there's something called a game loop. The game loop is pretty much a sequence in which specific functions, procedures, methods are called, and they are called a specific number of times, which results in kind of a frame rate. And PICO-8 has 3 of these functions. The first one is the init function, which is called just one time, And in this init function, you do all the stuff to set up the game, like reset the score counter, stuff like that. Then there's the update function. Here's all the game logic. Say you want to do some collision detection. Did player X had rock Y? You do this here. If you want to increase the score counter, you do this here. And you have the draw function, which is the function in which the screen is redrawn. So here we draw the map, or we draw the sprites, the enemies, our score counter, stuff like that. So since these are functions, we tell that to PICO-8, and every function begins with the keyword function and ends with the end keyword, and all in between is what makes up this function. So init is called once for every program you run in PICO-8. Update and draw are called all the time. So they are cycled through, and that generates the game. And that is pretty much all there is to the game loop right now. So let's do our Hello World program, and we just say print Hello World, and that's it, and run. And it just says Hello World. We go back to the code editor with escape, and we go here and we type CLS, which should clear the screen, and it does. And we can also go and put our Hello World somewhere on the screen. Let's say at 50/50 in the color number 2, whichever color number 2 is. Let's see. Ah, okay. As you can see, text in PICO-8 is always graphical text, and if you want to have another font, you have to do your own font. So that is pretty much the basic of PICO-8 when it comes to the game loop. We do the init here, and let me quickly show what happens if you put these lines into the draw function. So what would happen? PICO-8 would call draw all the time, and it would always clear the screen, and it would always print Hello World at 50/50. Let's try this. Wait, let's remove this from the init function. So nothing changed. If we go in the update function and we say in this init function first, let's say y is 0, and we say y++, and then we do a print Hello World at the y position. Then when we run this, you have to look very closely. Oh, there's a syntax error. Yeah, so we say y plus. So let me quickly explain what happens here. Init is called once, so we set the variable y. We don't have to say variable or dim or something like this. We set it to 0. And since the update function is called 30 times a second, we then increase y 30 times a second by 1. So every second we go 30 pixels, or increase y by 30. And what we then do is we redraw the screen 30 times a second, and that leads to this Hello World, which moves down because y is increased. So the top left corner is 0, 0, and if we want to move the text down, we just have to increase y, because this is the x coordinate, this is the y coordinate, and this is the color. So let's do this again. You can see this moves down about 30 pixels a second. There's also an update 60, which updates the screen 60 times a second. So we get a 60 FPS game. But let's try this out. Sure. So now what happens is Y is increased still by 1, but the speed should be double because it is updated 60 times a second. So it should move down 60 pixels a second. Let's see. Yeah, you can see it's much faster. And it looks a bit smoother, I think. And if you use update 60, you will also get 60 frames per second redraw. Okay, we can do the same to the x coordinate. So we say x is 0, x plus 1. So this is pretty much x equals x plus 1. We increase x by 1 and we do the same here. We say x. And if we start this now, what should happen? Place your bets in the comment. Right. Okay, so we have moving text, which is nice, but it's not much in terms of a game. So let's move over to the sprite editor and let's create our player sprite. For now, we just call him Mr. X, and we will do an 8x8 pixel character, which is pretty small, and we will give him a head and a body, arms. I'm not the greatest artist here, but we can always come back and change this sprite. Okay, so can we make him a little bit more interesting? Maybe we can. Let's give him some red hair and some starry eyes. And maybe give him some feet. Okay, so this is our player sprite standing. Maybe we put his arm down. Like this. Okay, so there's our player sprite. And now let's try to place him on the screen somewhere. So instead of moving our text here, we will move the player sprite. And for that, we have to say SPR for sprite. Then we have to know which number this sprite is. And this is sprite number 1, as we can see here. And we say sprite number 1 at x, y. And we just delete this line. And that should move our player sprite around the screen. And there we go. Just like that. So it's pretty easy to do this in PICO-8. Yeah, so this concludes this video. In the next video, we are going to implement some joystick controls or keyboard controls to move the sprite around, and we will probably start with a map. So stick around. This is part 1 of PICO-8. Tell me what you think. Should I continue this series? Are you interested in seeing how a game is made? Do you want to hack along? And yeah, if you want to do the music for this game or the sound effects, just let me know. Support is welcome. So until next time, thank you and bye-bye. Oh, just noticed we didn't save the game, so we just tape save and we call this rocks for now, and that saved the game. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Retro is the New Black. If you're new to the channel, please like and subscribe. If you like the video, please share. Every like, share, and comment helps a lot. Until next time, bye-bye.